It's no secret that virtual reality is becoming a very hot market, especially within gaming. However, currently it also has a very limited user base given its price. VR units for PC can go for north of $800, and don't forget, that's just the unit, then you need a machine to power it. And that isn't cheap either. At the minimum, you'll need a $1,000 PC for a comfortable VR experience. VR gaming at this point has been limited because of the cost of its entry, but with the PlayStation VR being $350 and running on a console that already has a large user base and is much cheaper than what the top-of-the-line gaming PCs are, it makes it much more accessible. But even then, a complete VR experience would cost you in the ballpark of $600 if you find some good deals. But still, that makes it more accessible than it ever was. We are still a few months away from the release of PlayStation VR. It's such an unpredictable platform, but in this video, I hope to give you some clarity in what to expect from Sony's latest gamble. Let's make one thing perfectly clear. The PlayStation 4 does not need VR. This isn't a console that's struggling and Sony needs to attach a gimmick on it to help push sales. No, that's not the case at all. In fact, Sony is in an extremely comfortable position. The PlayStation 4 has done phenomenal sales numbers. It's on track to be one of the best-selling consoles of all time. It probably won't beat the colossal success that was the PlayStation 2, but regardless, the PS4 is booming and it's not a platform that needs to be saved. Funny enough, the console has a very established user base, but it seems like the current user base aren't the crop of gamers that are completely stoked for VR. If you browse forums and social media, you'll see that VR has the current PlayStation audience very divided. Some are very excited to see what kind of experience VR can bring to the table on consoles, while others can't justify what is still a sizable investment to an unproven platform. And being an unproven platform, that means that not all developers are going to be backing it 100%. And you can see that from the library of games that is currently announced for VR. There isn't that marquee game that really sells the platform to the hardcore gamer. Sure, there are exciting games like Riggs Mechanized Combat League, which is a really interesting arena mech shooter. Until Dawn Rush of Blood, there's Golem, Batman Arkham VR, which isn't a traditional Arkham game, so don't get too excited. There is a lot in terms of quantity on the PSVR. We do know that games such as Resident Evil 7 and Gran Turismo Sport will feature full VR support, but they aren't exclusive, so it's not essential for you to pick up PSVR to play those games. And then there's gonna be things like Final Fantasy 15 VR experience and Star Wars Battlefront X-Wing Mission, which are just smaller bite-sized experiences rather than full-fledged VR games. So if you're a current PlayStation 4 owner, ask yourself, are those games worthy for you to drop $350? I can see why a lot of people would say no. And for those hardcore PlayStation gamers that have been around the block, we know that Sony is kind of inconsistent when it comes to supporting new platforms. PlayStation Move didn't last long, they dropped the PS Vita like it was a bad habit. I'm not saying PlayStation VR will follow the same path as those two. Sony is investing a lot into VR, and it only makes sense for them to support it in the long term. But all of that is in regards to the hardcore gaming audience. That's not exactly who VR is targeting. Sony has already won over a large portion of the core gamers, but there is a lot of monetary gain in attracting a casual audience as well. Nintendo saw that with the Wii. PlayStation VR has the opportunity to do what the Wii did. When someone that doesn't know much about gaming sees a kiosk for PlayStation VR and they try it out and are blown away by a tech demo, then that's an opportunity for Sony to create a brand new consumer of their product. What is even more interesting is that PSVR, at least initially, will be a very hard product to find. Pre-orders are already sold out, and that gives PSVR the allure of, oh man, everyone else wants it, I want it too. Maybe that's not the best way to think about what to buy, but when you're thinking about what to get the family for the holidays, if VR creates as much of a storm as it's predicted to, it could be a very hot product come the holiday season. And at the very least, PSVR is probably not going to be just a shovelware machine. At least when you look at what's announced, playing RE7 start to finish with VR could be really cool. Riggs has a lot of potential, and while those games may not make a lot of you spend $350, if they release a few more high-profile games in the future and you see PSVR for a slightly lower price, maybe the core gamers will be all over it too. Sometimes we, myself included, are stuck in the gamer bubble, but at the end of the day, Sony and PlayStation is a business, and the goal of any business should be to make the most money possible. And if Sony can create a platform that not only the hardcore gamers are eating up, but a lot of families and people that don't play a lot of video games, well then they stand to make a lot of money. And the more money they make, that means the more capital they'll have to invest in future projects. PSVR is a very unpredictable platform, judging by the initial hype and the fact pre-orders are already sold out. Depending on what kind of stock Sony can produce for the holidays, I see this being something that will sell a lot of units. What do you think? Are you already sold on VR and excited to see what virtual reality can bring to gaming? Or are you still one of those that are skeptical and need to be won over? Comment your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.